Hi friends, it's Dana here. Today we took my super curious son Henri to the Corkscrew Swamp outside of Naples, Florida, and we had the chance to see so many fun animals. It was so incredible. We even saw a baby barred owl be fed by its mommy a fish, and it was super cool. But we also got to see a lot of really precious other types of birds. And so today we picked up this book there. It's called Henri, the Impatient Heron. We saw lots of birds like this, and so I'm going to read you a book all about this Mr. Henri here. So Henri, the Impatient Heron is by Donna, and it's illustrated by Christina, Wald. Here we go. Henri was a young heron, a great blue heron that lived near a pond. His long, thin legs were great for wading, and his long, pointed bill was great for catching fish. But the young heron had a problem. He couldn't stand still. Other herons stood still for hours, legs stiff, bodies rigid, necks poised to strike out at a fish or salamander or tasty frog that might swim by. They stood still so long that the fish and the salamanders and the frogs forgot the herons were there. But the young heron was impatient and had been that way since he hatched. The other chicks in the rookery waited patiently in their nest, high in the tree, for Mom or Dad to return with food. Henri hopped and squawked about, too anxious to stand still. His brother and sister said, "Stand still, you're stepping on our heads." But he couldn't. When Henri's mother or father returned, he hopped about some more. "Stand still," his parents pleaded, but he just couldn't. Finally, when he was so hungry he could hardly stand it, he got a little bit to eat. It's not that he didn't try. Many times he practiced, perched on the side of his nest, but soon his legs would begin to twitch and his neck would begin to itch. Then he'd raise his long leg to scratch his back or flap his wings to stretch. In his nest, it didn't matter. His mother and father brought food, but soon he would be on his own. He would have to feed himself. When it was time to fly, the young heron liked the way the wind felt beneath his wings. He wasn't afraid. He had always lived high in a tree. With all his hopping and flapping, his large wings had grown strong. At the pond, his brother and sister stayed near their mother. He watched a mallard family parade by. A doe and her fawn walked to the lakeshore to take a drink. Then he spied a dragonfly and followed it through the cattails to a red-winged blackbird's nest. There was so much to see and do at the pond that Henri forgot about his family until his tummy began to rumble. He looked for his mother, his sister, and brother, but they were nowhere to be found. That's when he knew he was alone and would have to feed himself. "I can do this," he thought. "After all, how hard can it be to catch a fish?" He waded in the water and looked and looked. His gray head darted this way and that, watching below for a shiny fish to bolt between his skinny legs. But none did. His twisting neck and bobbing head frightened the fish away. On the shore, the little heron spotted a salamander. Oh, what a tasty treat! He could move fast when he wanted to. He ran toward the salamander with great speed, but the salamander saw him and quickly darted away. His bill hit the bank where the salamander had been, and all he got was a mouthful of sand. Yuck! "I'm so hungry," thought the impatient heron. "I'll eat the next thing that moves." Then he spied a plump little frog sitting on a lily pad nearby. Just the thing, Henri thought, and he took a great big leap. The frog jumped away just in time. Henri followed, his long legs running, wings flapping, but the frog jumped again. Henri ran smack into a log and fell backwards in the water. Kersplash! Looking up to see what he hit, the little heron saw it wasn't a log at all. It was a heron, and not just any heron. It was the great blue heron, the heron of all herons. "Oh, pardon me, sir. I thought you were a log," the little heron said with a bow. "You are quite excused," said the great blue heron, and with a kingly, kindly voice. "After all, I am the king of camouflage." "The king of camouflage?" the young heron asked. "Oh, yes," said the king. "I can stand still so long that even I think I turned into a log." The impatient heron hung his head and said, "I wish I could stand still. I'm so hungry I could eat a log." The great blue heron clucked and shook his head. "You know," he told the young heron, "when I was little, I couldn't stand still either. Then I learned the trick." Henri peeked up hopefully and asked, "What'd you do?" With a knowing look, the great blue heron said, "The trick is to look like a stick." "Look like a stick?" the young heron asked. "Yes," said the king. "A fish is afraid of a heron, but not afraid of a stick. When you stand very still, the fish will think your legs are sticks." "Oh!" And then Henri asked, "May I use your trick?" "Be my guest," said the king, and off he flew with a kick and a switch. The sun was beginning to set in the sky, but the impatient heron knew he had to try. He found an inlet that looked like a good place to catch a frog, salamander, or fish. Then he stood still and thought, "I must think like a fish. I must look like a stick." His legs grew tired, his feet got cold, and yet he stood quite still. Just as the last of the light of the day sank beneath the hill, a fish swam by. Without batting an eye, Henri's neck darted forward with all strength of his own. Then he lifted his head. A large fish squirmed in his bill. "I caught one," he thought, and then he swallowed the fish. Suddenly, his stomach was quiet and full, so he flew to a perch and preened, very proud of himself. When he grew tired, he put his head under a wing and happily went to sleep. The impatient heron had learned to stand still. All right, friends, I hope you enjoyed that book all about that impatient heron. If you pick up this book yourself, there's all sorts of facts for a curious mind. I don't know if you have a curious mind, but I know that my Henri does. And he really loved reading all of these facts. So I hope you get a chance to pick up this book. Here's another page of them. Oh my goodness. That's so much fun. It's called Henri the Impatient Heron. And I hope you have tons of fun learning how to be like a heron yourself. All right. Thanks so much for reading with me, friends. Bye.